So today we've got an alignment-filled Monday. Ryan's starting off with the 65 Mustang Coupe. The old school Mustangs are kind of a little bit tricky to align sometimes. The alignment spec on them is really wonky from the factory, and you could actually get like negative caster in some of these things, which makes them drive really bad. So this one we're working on a few mods to try and get some good positive caster in it and make the car drive a lot better. So we can show you kind of how all that works and what these things look like and what we tend to look for on them.
Pulling off the strut rod here because we actually don't have enough casters, so for us to be able to pull the control arm a little bit, we're gonna take out of the bushings, tiny smidge. Right now I'm loosening up the upper control arm bolts so I can take the shims out of the back side and add them to the front side, and hopefully it allows us to get some more caster here.
So when you look at one of these Mustangs, you'll notice they have kind of a unique suspension system. They have the main lower control arm here, and then they've also got a strut rod. And the strut rod length really determines the caster of the car as well. So if you pull this strut rod shorter and pull this assembly forward, it increases your caster. Or if any of these parts get bent and get pushed back and decrease the caster, you can get a car that's got really twitchy, sketchy handling. So on this car, it had really worn out upper control arm bushings and ball joints. So as you can see, we put brand new control arms in it with brand new ball joints. On the adjustment of this, if we move that in and out, it's how we adjust the camber. And then if we alter the shims, we can move the ball joint forward and backward by angling the number of shims we put in the front and rear mount so that we could get just a little bit more caster. On these cars, we usually like to see them with the maxed out caster because that's going to give it the best feel as it's driving down the road.
Action.
Alright, so Ryan's been working away on the Mustang. We started back in the rear. We got down to 0.01 of thrust angle. That's basically is the rear end of the car at a perfect 90-degree angle to the center line of the car. A lot of stick axle cars, people don't actually align that because they feel like it's not adjustable, but it is. You can do it. It just is a pain in the butt to do it, which is why a lot of people don't do it. But if your rear end is not going the same way as the rest of your car, it kind of crab walks. And another problem with that is it'll make it handle differently from right and left turns, and also it'll do really funky things when it hits bumps. So one of the things we really like to do with all of our alignments is take the time to try and get the rear thrust angle to 0.01 or less. That makes a huge difference in how the car drives. One thing that's kind of wild on this car is if you look down here, you'll see it's got a 32nd of toe out per side. So the rear tires in this car are actually kind of pointed outwards, which it's very little, it's only a 32nd of an inch per side. But when we set up a lot of our custom floater housings, we'll put them with just a pinch of toe in that makes them a little bit more positive feeling on tracking. If this was actually like an autocross car or race car, the car would have a feeling that it was loose, which means it would kind of want to oversteer. So if you have a rear end that's inherently got a little bit of toe out, it'll make the car oversteer a little bit more. If we give it a touch of toe in, it'll give it a little bit more positive feel. So now that the Mustang's all wrapped up, we got the front alignment the way we want, back alignment the way we want, we're gonna go take this one out on a test drive, and we're gonna pull in a Miata that's in getting a track alignment. So kind of a neat little car. Definitely a big contrast to the old school Mustang.
My name's Jason Toth. This is my wife's 66 Mustang with a late model 5.0 and 5-speed. We bought the car about 2 years ago and have just been addressing the issues that have come up with it as we go. A previous shop had tried to align the car for us and told us that the chassis was just so far out of shape that they couldn't align it and that they would get it as close as they could for us. I brought the car in to Dussault Designs to have some steering issues looked at, and Mike told me that he had located some worn steering and suspension parts, and he felt like he could get the car aligned for us. And it's night and day difference. The car used to be a real handful on the road, a lot of bump steer, a lot of jerkiness, and now it just drives straight down the road, true track. It's a pleasure to drive now.
So we got the Mustang out, test drove it, everything's cool. So we brought the old Miata up on the lift, and first thing we do is comp it, take a measurement, and see what we're looking at. And this one needs Jesus. So this is exactly why we align cars, so that they aren't like this. This would be very sketchy. So we'll have to get it close and then recomp it. When they're really far off like this, you know, he just did his suspension parts and put all the parts on there that he wants. So we'll have to get it close, then recomp it, and then do an actual alignment. Because when they get this far off, if we were to just align it, it wouldn't be accurate because it's too far off for the heads to really read it accurately.
Alright, so on a Miata, the rear camber and tow setup's actually a little bit different. It runs off the lower control arm and you have an eccentric on both sides. And so you pretty much, you just gotta adjust both of them as even as possible, and it'll resultantly change your tow and your camber to get to where what you would like.
Ryan's got this initial alignment done, and now he's fine-tuning it. This is more of a track car, so the owner gave us the own specs that he wants it set to. Typically on a track car, you're going to see a lot more negative camber than a typical street car. We typically run really low tow numbers on even our street alignments, just because it helps with tire wear and handling a little bit. So this one's going to end up about 2.5 degrees negative. Some guys like to go way up there, and we've seen them as high as 3.5, 4 degrees on some cars. But this one, we're just going to set it at like 2.5 degrees. He wants kind of a low caster number, so everybody's got their own feeling on what they want to see their alignment set to. And it's kind of a fun thing for a lot of people to set them at different settings, go out and try and drive them and see what they like the best. The Miata's got a little bit more of a modern suspension, which is kind of cool. It's got upper and lower control arm. This one has a coilover assembly attached to the lower arm, and it has a front steer rack. These things are really good handling little cars, mainly because they've got a tried and true suspension design, and they're really, really light. But it's kind of a neat contrast to see the difference between a Miata and an old school Mustang and how far technology came with suspension design. This design, more or less, is what's used even in like a C6 Corvette. You know, they're very similar. Upper and lower control arm, and you know, like that car's on coilovers, but some of them will run a transverse leaf. So when we get to a Corvette, we could show you that stuff. But definitely a improved design over the Mustang. All right, so we got this one all lined up, got the specs where the customer wants it. We're just gonna throw a torque wrench on all the pickup bolts and take it on a test drive. Hope you guys enjoyed seeing a little bit of alignment basics and comparing the Mustang to Miata suspension. Make sure you click that like button and subscribe.
Right, check that out. We're driving straight, steering wheel straight. Yeah, I think so. You can let go of the wheel, we're driving straight, steering wheel straight. Look, we hit a few little bumps, barely veers. I mean, I'd say it's pretty much of a win on there. I like it a lot.